What an appropriate intro music for today's topic. Now that the dust has settled, it's time for us to zoom in on the 93rd Academy Awards. At the start of this week, we got historic results at the Oscars, a big win for diversity. But why did it take nearly a century for Hollywood to get here? And is this shift permanent? And of course, let's talk about a few of those landmark wins. To provide an insider perspective, we're joined via Zoom by film director Eugene Suen. Good morning, Eugene.
Good morning to you, TGIF.
TGIF indeed. All right. The world has been charmed off our feet by veteran actress Youn Yuh-jung. There's a lot of buzz around Nomadland's historic win. And of course, the hopes at Oscars has finally responded to the Oscars so white criticism, right? No pressure, Eugene. But what would be your one-sentence summary of the 93rd Academy Awards?
Only one sentence. It's funny, if we're talking about the ceremony itself, I would say it was quite innovative, actually, because this year, due to COVID, they had to really size it down. And I thought it was experimental. It was interesting, even though there were some uneven parts to it. But it was a good ceremony, I thought. The awards results... Oh, go ahead.
No. I mean, because I thought some parts were a little bit rough around the edges. I mean, given the scale of the Academy, I mean, maybe the climatic moment could have been, better produced. But nonetheless, given the circumstances, you're right. It was still a pretty amazing affair.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think there were just so many ways it could have gone wrong. But I think for the most part, I think they kept it afloat. People seemed to be having a good time.
Yeah.
The camera angle was fairly precise. And Steven Soderbergh, of course, one of the great Hollywood directors who was also one of the producers of the ceremony. I thought he tried to do something very innovative. And by and large, he succeeded.
And what about the awards?
The awards, it's pretty remarkable because obviously diversity is the big thing this year. And I think by and large, the results were quite remarkable, both in terms of the diversity, the range of talents they honored, but also I think just how worthy the winners were. Because I think usually people would gripe about the results. Why did this film win? Why did that actor get snubbed? For the most part, I thought these were very worthy winners. And we can go into details more about who the winners were. But by and large, I think the consensus was that this was a very good year for the Academy Awards. As
far as diversity is concerned. But on the flip side, I do think Anthony Hopkins winning Best Actor, he did get a little bit of criticism, yeah?
It did, I think, just because, of course, Chadwick Boseman, who had won all the major precursors and who, of course, died at the age of 43 last year due to cancer. I think a lot of people were hoping that this would be the last chance to honor him, and because he gave such a remarkable performance. And I think that was the upset that that a lot of people were alluding to. I think out of what was otherwise a very smoothly run festival, at the very end, you ended with this kind of unexpected anticlimax, which was Anthony Hopkins winning, and then it very abruptly just kind of ended that way. So people were not too happy about that.
Just like our radio segment today, it is a live show after all, guys. Let's give the Academy a break.
Exactly, we're giving some breaks.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the historic win for actress Youn Yuh-jung. For anyone who loves South Korean films and is someone who's been watching South Korean movies for years, we knew that Youn Yuh-jung was a capable actress. That's kind of an understatement. She also led a pretty dynamic life. But I do think the world came to know her on a different scale with her role in Minari. So from the perspective of a director, what do you think is the biggest charm of this actress?
I think Youn Yuh-jung, of course, she's been a legend in South Korean cinema for the past 50 years, really. And I think what makes her remarkable as a performer, I think above anything else for me, is really her fearlessness. I think how adventurous she is in terms of the roles that she takes on. But in this particular film, Minari, of course, she, I think, just gave such a dynamic performance. I think a lot of people talk about the fact that it's a very unconventional grandma that she's playing. She's very acerbic, very sarcastic, and very no-nonsense. And I think all of those things are true. But I think, that particular trope could have easily been just a shtick, could be a cliche. But I think what made her remarkable was the fact that it also was a very layered performance at the same time. It's very emotional, it's very dynamic, and over the course of the film you really see her transformation from being this very kind of funny grandma to you see the emotional essence of who she is as a person. And then of course, without spoiling the film, things happen later on in the movie that takes a tragic turn, and she really conveys that turn very beautifully.
From a few interviews I've read, I understand the director, Lee Isaac-chung, did give a lot of freedom for actress Youn Yuh-jung to convey these emotions in a dynamic way. I mean, I'm sure there was a pretty detailed script. I haven't had access to the script, but there was a lot of scenes that were ad-libbed or added upon.
That's correct, because Lee Isaac-chung, he wrote the script. It's a semi-autobiographical film, and this character was really based on his own grandma. And so I think initially, there were talks, I think, between Youn Yuh-jung and Isaac about whether or not the performance should be modeled on Isaac's real grandma. But I think Isaac is a director who really gives a lot of freedom to his actors, and he's very collaborative in that sense. So he really just told Youn Yuh-jung, you should just kind of play this in a way that you see fit. And of course, I think Youn Yuh-jung really brought a lot of her own personality to bear on the character. And I think that's also what made her such a standout during the award season, because she is such an authentic, honest person. I mean, we saw that a little bit of that during the award ceremony itself as well. She just doesn't give a crap. I mean, that's kind of her personality. And I think that really charmed a lot of people.
And that's authentically exactly who she is, who she's been, who she's identified as for years, decades of her careers, right? And so her speech was so memorable. But going back to the movie Minari, which scene, without giving away, I guess, too much about the movie, which scene featuring Youn Yuh-jung was the most memorable for you as a director?
There's so many great scenes, but I think for me, I'll pick a scene that doesn't spoil much of anything. I think it's the relationship between her and David, the grandson. That is really one of the central relationships of the movie, and you can even argue that that is the emotional core of the film in terms of the undercurrent that runs throughout the entire movie. So for me, it's the scene by the pond when they are talking about planting Minari. I think that obviously it's the symbolic heart of the film, but also, the affection that she has, I think the joy she has, the enthusiasm she has as this very unpretentious, unconventional grandma.
Who doesn't bake cookies.
Who doesn't bake cookies, who cusses, who watches wrestling. And there's so many good things, in that department too. So there's so many to choose from. And you can pick any one of them and be dazzled by what she did. But for me, I think the gradual bonding that happens between her and David by the pond, that was very touching for me.
There are a lot of small scenes that are so subtle that you think, oh, that happens so naturally. But you think about it, and it's such detail, like the scene where... Am I giving away too much? Actress Youn Yuh-jung is seen, I think, biting into a chestnut or some kind of food, and she gives it to David's character, and you think, yuck. But at the same time, if you grew up with a Korean grandma at that time, that wouldn't be so strange.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think that was, that's the meeting. That particular scene takes place soon after their initial meeting, and that's when they're still kind of getting acquainted with one another. And that was a great scene, just the reaction from David, like what she does. But I think also subsequently the fact that, she, them having to share a room, and she just becoming basically in his eyes, she's this annoyance, the source of, frustration for him, and how that relationship changes, I think was, they did it beautifully.
We really didn't give away a lot, listeners. I mean, if you haven't seen the movie yet, this movie is so beautifully created. I think you need to give it a fair try before looking at all the reviews. It's better if you haven't actually read through all the reviews, I think. There was so much hype around the movie, and that's excellent. But at the same time, I think it does ruin the experience for some moviegoers, right? Okay.
That's right.
There are plenty of labels to describe the film Minari: an immigration story, search for maybe an Asian American identity, being amongst them, the importance of family too. What do you think is the most important message viewers should take away from the movie?
I think ultimately this is really a movie about family, and I think what the Isaac Chung, the director-writer, I think he really tried to create an emotional experience. I think that would really allow the viewers to look deeply within themselves about kind of what it means to be a human being, what it means to be in relationship with others. And I think, the movie, it's not the kind of movie that, can be so easily condensed into like a set of messages or propositions. But I think ultimately what you walk away from it is that you feel a renewed sense of life, a renewed sense of appreciation for your loved ones, despite whatever differences there might be, despite whatever wounds and traumas there might be. I think love and the family bond, those things are greater than anything else.
And that's kind of a universal theme, and perhaps even the reason why most of us live anyhow, which is why maybe this movie was identified by many people as touching and moving. moving, and it got to people, yeah?
Yeah, I think despite the fact that we can talk about the sociological aspect of the film, this being an Asian American film that takes place in Arkansas in the American South, but I think the reason why it resonated with so many people, I think, is because it is universal. In its specificity, there's universality. I think what really works and what touches people above anything else is how beautifully and how dynamically it portrays human relationship, and that's something that anyone can relate to.
You actually have a close personal relationship with Minari director Lee Isaac-chung, and I also saw your recent tweet about the LA Times article. You produced another Lee Isaac-chung film, Abigail Harm, in 2012. So I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about that relationship. Have you spoken to him since the Oscars?
I have. So Isaac is a very close friend, a very close colleague. So we collaborate and work on different projects. And he is, I think, still kind of recovering from the whole experience. I think the whole thing was just so surreal for him because he really started out writing what he thought was a very personal, very intimate film. So anything that happened subsequently with all the awards attention, the box office, that was just beyond his wildest imagination. So it was a surreal experience for him going to the Oscars. And of course, award season, for anyone who knows anything about it, it's really like running an election campaign. You're just doing interviews nonstop. You have to talk to people. You have to kiss babies. You do things like that.
During the pandemic?
Well, not this time around. Maybe digitally over Zoom. I don't know. But in the past, you would have to do things like that. So I think it was several months of just full time doing that. So I think he's, in a way, probably also happy that it's come to an end. But above all else, he's grateful about what happened.
Can I ask you a little bit more, I suppose, a personal question? You've collaborated with him a number of occasions. So what is he like on set as a director?
He is, as I think there's this image of a director needing to be someone who screams a lot, who yells, who is very demanding, very controlling. He is the exact opposite of that. On set, he's a very measured, deliberate, soft-spoken, thoughtful person, and that really is who he is as a human being as well. So he gives a lot of room for his collaborators to do what they need to do, and he conducts his production in a way. I think there's just a sense of love and a sense of affection and respect for one another, and also that I think really inspires you to do your best as well. But I think what's remarkable as a longtime friend and collaborator, it's just the fact that I think this movie, Minari, I think the reason why it feels so authentic is because it really is him. It's an extension of him as a human being. He's a thoughtful, compassionate, loving person who also has a really great sense of humor, which you might not be able to tell from watching his interviews, but he's hilarious in person. And so that all kind of comes through in the way he works, but also in this particular film.
I'll take your word for it. And honestly, maybe that's why when actress Youn Yuh-jung said, she extends the award that she got as Best Supporting Actress at the Oscars, she extended it to the Minari family, and she said they did become a family. Maybe that came from the heart too, if Lee Isaac-chung is as you've described him. Yeah,
absolutely. Because I produced his last narrative feature film, Abigail Harm, and I also produced another documentary of his from 2015 called I Have Seen My Last Born. So on both of those occasions, but also other occasions I'm aware of, it's true. You walk away feeling like you have created an outside family, really. I think it is that sense of affection. That is the kind of bond that you do walk away with from his movie. And I think that's a testament to his ability to create that kind of dynamic relationship on his film set. And he's just a great guy.
Earlier, I think your dog was agreeing with you.
Was that my dog? Yes, quite possibly. That's right.
All right. Unfortunately, director Lee Isaac-chung did not take home the win for Best Director, but there was enough buzz around the movie Minari, so maybe it's not all about the wins after all. Are there any other films, directors, actors that you believe merit discussion from the 93rd Academy Awards without even a significant win?
I think obviously I'm very biased, but I really had wished that I wish he had won the screenplay award, because I really thought Minari was a beautiful screenplay. I think obviously a lot of people talked about Chadwick Boseman already. I think he would have been a very deserving winner as well. Riz Ahmed, I think the best actor category is just very competitive, and it consists of a lot of wonderful actors. So I think Riz Ahmed would have been amazing to get some kind of recognition. I would say Ma Rainey as a whole should have gotten more recognition. And also one movie that was sort of overlooked, excuse me, by the Academy Awards was the Spike Lee film, The Five Bloods. I think a lot of people were hoping that the lead actor, Delroy Lindo, would have gotten the Best Actor nomination, and he didn't. I think the movie is kind of messy. It doesn't all work, but it's really quite a compelling and stirring film, and I wish it had gotten more attention.
All right, I'm going to take this to the beginning of our conversation, a focus on diversity at this year's Oscars. It had been criticized for over many years for largely ignoring the stories of minorities, and this year we saw prominent Asians, including but not limited to Youn Yuh-jung, Chloe Zhao, Stephen Yeun, and Riz Ahmed receive nominations. And this is against a backdrop of increasing Asian hate crimes throughout the United States. So it was important timing. What do you think of these nominations? Did the Academy get them right this year?
I think by and large they did. I think, it's been widely reported that this was, in terms of nominations, this was the most diverse Academy Awards ever in terms of the kind of actors and the talents they nominated. So obviously, Chloe Zhao made history by being, the first, only the second woman after Catherine Bigelow with The Hurt Locker. She was the second female, but also the first woman of color to have won a Best Director. And Nomadland, of course, is an astounding movie. So I think the fact that she, in particular, got attention, I think was big inspiration for me. So I think, the Oscars, of course, historically, they've been criticized for having been sort of this kind of patriarchal, very wide, very sort of backward looking organization. And I think as a result of all the activist movements and various controversies that have been stirred up in the last few years, I think they're really now making intentional effort to diversify their membership. And I think the kind of nominations we saw this year, I think that was a direct result of what they did in terms of really expanding their demographics. So I think it's obviously there's still a lot of work to be done,
right,
and much progress needs to be made, but I think they're on the right track, and I was generally very pleased with what happened this year.
But do you think the diverse list of Oscar nominees will be a permanent shift? Because if it's a one-time thing, I don't think that's sufficient.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the worry. So we'll see what happens next year. But I think, by and large, because of all the things that are going on in the United States politically and socially, I think now more than ever before, there really is a strong emphasis on equity, on diversity, on equality, on basically really promoting talents, individuals who have historically been overlooked because through no faults of their own except of who they are. So I think because it's happening now on such a systemic level, even though it's still moving slowly, but because you see people putting work into that, I feel like this shift, I don't know how permanent it's going to be, but I feel like at least for the next few years, I think we are going to see more and more I think results that reflect the kind of diversity that we've all been craving for. So we'll see what happens. My guess is that this will be around for at least a while longer.
And as a moviegoer, what I would love to do is keep the Academy accountable for the promises that they made.
Yes.
And I feel like there is a consensus across the world that's requiring and asking Hollywood to be less focused on that patriarchal system. That is kind of the past, right? It's a little dated.
Yeah, exactly. And in terms of keeping the Academy Awards accountable, I think that's a very good point because there was this whole Oscar so white, controversy that happened a few years ago. And that really got a lot of attention. And that really was because of activists and people who have a particular burden in this area. They really came out and held the Academy to account. And so what's happened subsequently in terms of diversifying the membership, that was, again, the direct result of people kind of calling them out. So I think it is important for audiences, for cinephiles, for filmmakers, for people in the industry, but also outside the industry to collectively push for this.
All right, I got a listener question. I don't want to throw you off. If you don't feel comfortable, you don't have to answer it. But Nikolai asked, what other recent or forthcoming Korean films deserves our attention, or at least based on your expertise, which movies pique your interest?
Oh, in terms of Korean films, that's a great question. Recently, because of the COVID pandemic, a lot of major releases have been sort of postponed sold to various OTT platforms. I think a couple of the recent ones that I saw that I personally quite liked, I thought The Book of Fish, actually, with Song Kang-gil. I thought that was a very, very good movie.
In black and white, too.
Exactly. And that movie, unfortunately, because it's black and white, it's more of an art house film. It's COVID, so it hasn't, in my opinion, hasn't gotten as much attention as it probably deserves. But that really is a very thoughtful and moving human drama. And on the other end of the spectrum, I thought Space Sweepers was fun. I think there were people who thought it was maybe too much like Guardians of the Galaxy, maybe a little bit too Hollywoody. But I thought for a Korean film, the fact that they achieved that level of special effects and the fact that the movie, it really is just, it's a good popcorn movie. It did exactly what it's supposed to do. And I was quite fond of it.
And the thing about Netflix films is that it has that element, doesn't it? It's fun, it's engaging, it's easy to watch, some of them at least.
Yes, exactly. So I think it checked all of those boxes, and it's a testament again to the strength of Korean cinema that it worked out as well as it did. It's a wonderful movie, I thought.
Thank you for the recommendations, Eugene, and thank you so much for the interview. We hope to speak to you soon again in the near future.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Bye, Eugene.
Bye-bye.
If you're listening to our program using the podcast service, just a reminder that we do go live Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. Korea Standard Time. So tune in and help us make the show more informative by giving us your input. See you bright and early on Good Morning Seoul.